never give up, never quit, never surrender, because that's the only way.
Welcome to the Builder Hacks Podcast, your go-to destination for cutting-edge strategies, time-tested systems, and invaluable insights to revolutionize your construction business and elevate your life. Join your hosts, Nate Piper and Keith Meals, seasoned contractors who are not just in the trenches, but are also pioneering the future of the industry through Concord University. In each episode, we dive deep into the minds of the industry's most accomplished building professionals, uncovering their secrets to success and sharing actionable tips to help you thrive. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, our goal is to empower you to build a brighter future for yourself and for America. Tune in, level up, and let's build a better tomorrow together. This is the Builder Hacks Podcast. Build your future, building America. And this week, we get to talk about, I'm going to call it, this is actually taken from somebody else, so credit to Alex Hormozi. So we're going to talk about the lady in the red dress. So, and whenever I say that, so this is something that whenever we look at those kinds of things, the lady in the red dress is the distraction. And as entrepreneurs and business owners, so especially people who recognize opportunity, the distractions are the things that take you off course and can slow you down. And it's one of that when you first start out, it's one of the hardest lessons to learn. So is to the opportunities that come up, you don't take advantage of them. And there's one big reason behind that. So, and the big reason behind that, so is because the only way to get really good and become the expert and get, for most people, make the impact and get the compensation you're looking to get is to become the master in whatever it is you choose. So, and that mastery is part of the key. So that's what we want to talk about this week. So Nate, whenever you hear the word mastery and whenever you think about it in business, and especially in construction, what does that look like for you?
Well, to back up just for a second, the red dress analogy from Alex Hormozi, I immediately went back to the Matrix where, what is this, Keanu Reeves' character, whatever his
Neo.
name is Neo, right? When Neo's going down, he's walking down the street, and there's all these people flying by, and then the red dress girl picks up, and he looks at it, and then Morpheus, which was what's his name, Fishburne.
Yep, Lawrence Fishburne.
Lawrence Fishburne says, "Aha, caught you! You were distracted by the woman in a red dress."
Right.
So that's where my mind immediately goes. But that's so true, right? It's the shiny object syndrome. It is
exactly.
It is the distractions that come every day, right? And if you notice, that happened in the beginning of his training days, right? Before he got into learning how to do kung fu and all the martial arts and all the other components that went into it. It was, let me take you through this and let's see if you look at her and the distraction while you're going through it. So I say that to say this. There's 3 levels that you have to go through to get to a mastery level, right? You have to go through your apprentice stage, which is you're just being indoctrinated into the system. Then you have to go through your journeyman stage. This is the place in which you practice. And then eventually you get into mastery, right? Where your practice is now paying off for what you've done. And so that has been the system that has been around for ages. I can't even tell you how far it goes. Yeah, in construction, but also into any kind of service that has been provided, right? If you wanted to be a sheep herder, then you had to be able to be the kid out in the field that was monitoring the sheep and kind of getting it ready.
It was staying up in the middle of the night while the sheep herder was napping.
Yeah, and all those things, right? You had to learn how to deliver the babies, and you had to, all those things. And so it's in every single industry back to the beginning of time. So with that being said, there's been a lot of rumors, I don't want to say rumors, but speculation of how much time you have to be in something till you become a master. And in that mastery, some people say it's 10,000 hours. Some people say it's 10,000 times you have to see something in a particular way. I've somebody who said this was Myron Golden. He said this. He said, mastery is when you can do it without thinking about it. And you have to hit that point. Now, that might be For some people, it might be 8,000 hours instead of 10,000
Mhm.
hours. Some people, it might be 20,000 hours instead of 10,000 hours. But you
Right.
got to get to a point where you master something long enough or do something long enough that you do it without thinking. And in
Yep.
Myron's analogy, he said, it's like tying your shoes in the dark. You
Mhm.
know, when you first get started tying your shoes, you fumble through it, you can't pull it together.
Yep.
But ultimately, you get to a point where you now are doing it and talking or doing other things at the same time that you're tying your shoes. So you're no longer consciously thinking about what is it that I'm doing. And that's what makes it
It's
look so easy.
And that's really it's part of, and I actually think of whenever you're talking about that part where you get to that point where you've mastered it. So there's like 4 levels of learning so that I've
Mhm.
learned in my life. So, and this is from some of the trainings that I've done over the years. So, and it all starts out as it's unconscious and conscious, competence and incompetence. So unconscious, so what where you start out at is you're unconsciously incompetent. So
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. So, and since Nate was talking earlier, you were talking about tying shoes. One of the things that I think of is driving cars.
Yeah.
So, whenever you go ahead and you start driving a car, it's like you hop in the car the first time, and it's like, what are these pedals down here for? And you're like,
What is this
and
thing?
you're, and of course, whoever's teaching you to drive is like gas, brake, and if you learn how to drive a standard, so you've got
Yeah.
a clutch too, on that side of things, which is what I learned to drive on.
Yeah.
So you learn, you're like, I didn't realize all these things, and then yeah, I got to pay attention to this, and what are these handles on the sides for? What do I got to do with these? And don't the lights just come on now? In today's cars, they pretty much do if you set them on auto.
Yeah.
But there's so many different things that go into it that you had no idea about whenever you got started. So you're unconsciously incompetent. So now you've actually said once you find out those things, so you become consciously incompetent. I know that I don't know a whole lot of stuff. And that's the next step that you take into it's like, all right, now I got to go ahead and all right, how do I do this? I put the key in here. All right, did I adjust my mirrors? Did I put my seatbelt on? That all the different things that you run through, you start running through the checklist. So then what happens is you actually transfer into the third level, which is consciously competent. That means that whenever you get in, you put the seatbelt on, you adjust the mirrors first. So you go ahead and start the vehicle. Well, you drop it in drive, and then you start moving, and you're checking. So, and you're doing it because you're actually thinking through the checklist in your head. So I'm pulling out. I got to check left. I got to check right. So I've got to go ahead and pull out. Then, so how much gas do I put down? So you're thinking through that piece. Well, the piece that Nate's talking about for mastery is what we call unconscious competence. So
Yep.
that's the point where you drive, you actually leave the house in the morning, so you go out, do all these things and don't even think twice about it. You get to wherever you're going and you're like, I don't even remember driving to work today. How did I get here? So because you were doing 13 other things while you were doing that, because you've become so good at driving, you have to put zero energy and focus into it at all. So that's where, when we talk mastery, getting to that unconscious competence level, so where you
Absolutely.
don't have to think about one little thing.
Yeah. It's so, and sometimes it gets there, you get there, you don't even know that you're there,
Right.
and that's the thing that I think gets me all the time. It's like, well, how did you do the thing and the thing? And I was like, well, I just did it. I don't remember. I don't
Right.
remember the steps that I had to go through to do the thing, right? I just
Uh-huh.
do the thing. So I think that's what we talk about, and it's a great analogy for knowing what mastery is. I mean, that's what we all strive for,
Hmm.
in every aspect of our lives is to have mastery, and I was trying to remember back to the first time I experienced mastery, and I think it had probably, um, I think I was just doing a framing job, and I had been doing the same frame package for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. I don't know. It had gotten so used to doing it, right? And then it started to become, oh, I didn't even I didn't even think about the piece of
Right.
lumber I went and picked up, and I didn't even think about what I was cutting. I didn't even measure it. I just went over there and cut the same board, like
Hmm.
walked it off and measured. Like, oh, okay, good, good. And I just did it. And I think that's one of the first times I realized that I had mastered that step.
Right.
Um, because you get to a point where you've done it so much, you just know what it is.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the thing that kinda helped, for me anyway, changed my perspective of what I was doing, because now I understood everything that was going on with it, and then that became my goal. My goal was to hit mastery as soon as I could
Hmm.
in everything that I was doing, so that, and you can't cheat it, right? It's not like this is mastery is not one of those things that you can have a shortcut or cheat code to get there.
Right.
But you can get there more efficiently by
Mhm.
doing
For
things
sure.
in a certain order or certain way to be able to memorize what are the steps that you have to do to get
Mhm.
this thing learned. And I think that's probably something that should be taught in schools, but it's not. Um, but it's just some kind of memorization, like, oh, what was the Declaration of Independence? Well, that's great to know, but that's not
Right.
mastery, but that's how we judge people today. So
Right.
it's
And it's those pieces like that, and that's the key part for mastery is it really takes you to another level. And like one of the things that I think of especially so is because once you've mastered the and when you get into an industry, you get into construction, since we talk a lot about construction, so you get into business, whenever you get that level of mastery with something where you no longer have to think about it. So now your brain power can actually focus on the next big item that needs to be taken care of or that needs to be mounted or taken, that needs to be solved. So that's where your mind can go then. And that's
uh,
where that's where you start seeing you get better and better. It's like Nate was talking about, hey, I got this first time. So when I kind of realized I had mastered something because I hadn't thought about it, and it's one of those things where I think about whenever I go ahead and I've done that. It's like I look back now on the things that I used to do in a day 10 years ago that I thought was me doing so much. And I chuckle now because that gets done. So in a tenth of the time now, because you've gotten that good at it, you've got your own systems and processes put in place on how you can effectively do it. And I think that's part of the key. So is
mhm.
how you can effectively do it because there can be a pathway laid out for you. There can be steps laid out for you that will make it easier. Everybody typically makes it their own. Oh, because everyone does.
Have
It's
to.
like I always give the example. Paige is my daughter who works in my company. Well, and I expect her to do the same things I do. Like I'll go ahead and carry, parts of our lumber pack around for people, or we have to go pick up supplies and stuff like that. I'm like, you're not as big as I am, Paige. I
Mhm.
expect you to do the same thing. So I expect you to be able to carry that weight. So I expect you to be able to go ahead and figure it out. And like I remember one of the first times that I remember her having to figure this out, I was out of town. So and she calls me and we had a trim delivery. So to one of our projects. And they left it sitting outside. So it was a remodel. And a lot of times our trim company just
Yeah,
drops stuff off because they're there like 6 in the morning
on
and
the
they don't want to ring
curb
the homeowner's doorbell. So, and
or
she
on the
called me and she's
street.
like, yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, they will.
I've
Some of
done
them
it.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frame packs get left by the street a lot. Unless you're there. Anyways, so she calls me and she's like, I was out of town. And she called and she's like, this is all sitting outside. She's like, I've gotten all the baseboard and all the casing and stuff inside because she can break that down and carry that in. That's relatively easy. You just have to be able to manage the length of it.
Mhm.
She's like, but this exterior door, so it was a half light, so half of it was glass.
Yeah.
So she's like, I just can't lift it. I'm like, you can't leave it outside. I said, I don't care what you got to do. You better figure it out and get it in the house without damaging the door at the same time. I'm like, you've got to be able to figure out how to use your body, your resources, the tools that you've got to be able to make this happen. And she texted me about a half an hour later. She's like, I got it in and there's no damage to the door. We're perfect. We're good to go. And it's one of those pieces like for me, I just go ahead and grab it so and
Yeah.
muscle it in the house just because that I'm stronger than what she is. So and I can go ahead and handle that door. She isn't as strong as I am, which meant that she instead of going ahead and lifting up and throwing it on the shoulder or throwing it against the shoulders, which is what I would have done. So she had to go ahead and actually put a couple extra braces across the jam because she was going to have to lift it by the jam and she was literally carrying it inches off of the ground and going a few feet at a time, setting it down, a few feet at a time, setting it down, a few feet at a time, setting it down. We both accomplished the same result.
Mhm.
The process was different, and that'll typically happen with most people when they get to that mastery point. Is like if you're talking to Nate and I, so about doing something, he's gonna have a different process on what he does, and it's worked for him. I mean, Nate's what? How tall are you, Nate? 6'6"?
Yeah. Well, I was 6'5", but now I'm starting to shrink.
Oh, gotcha. You're
We're
going the
going
other way now.
outward and
Yeah,
going down.
Nate, I've always been 5'6", and I won't change because I'm not getting any shorter, man. That's all there
Yeah.
is to it. So in Nate's case, so being 6'5", he can do things differently than what I can do things. Everything that I do is based on balancing. So whenever it comes to moving materials, and I'm sure Nate does the same thing, but there's other items where he can go ahead and muscle it. And
Yeah.
it's easier for him to go ahead and muscle something than it would be for me to muscle that same piece. And it's the same thing like I was talking about with Paige. Everybody's got their process, everybody's got their way. I've
Yeah.
even got a little clamp now that I put on, especially 3/4 inch plywood. I don't like carrying 3/4 inch plywood by the sheet anymore. So the little clamp literally sits down over top of it and I lift it up. So there's a tool for that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I like for that, I show Paige that kind of stuff. I'm like, these are the types of things that you need to be able to find So, and I know, like, going back to one of our previous podcasts, we're talking about obsession. That's part of the obsession that comes in that gets you to mastery, is you've got to figure out the things, the tools, the processes that you need to be able to accomplish that same result effectively and consistently without having to think about it, so that it just gets done. So
Yeah, I think everyone has to come up with their own process, right? That's what helps you in mastery, but you have someone that guides you through the things. Just like what you're doing for Paige is that, you know, not allowing her to put it off or not to do the thing, right? It's like you got to figure this thing out. You got to figure out how to get this thing. This is part of you becoming a master. You've
right.
got to figure out how to leverage this thing that you don't know how to do and get it to
Mhm.
where it needs to be. And that's part of mastery. Part of mastery is also, knowing what to do, but also not giving up on the things that you know you have to do. And
Right.
so um, we kind of run into this all the time. And it's like, okay, well, we're all different body sizes. We're all different body types. We're all different thinkers, right? We have different, um, you know, brain organisms that's moving inside that's giving us
Mhm.
different thoughts, right? For my team, we talk about these things and we go, okay, well, what would you do in this scenario, and how would you do in this scenario, and
Yep.
what's going to be that, and then we kind of work through so that who's going to do what. Everyone's making it their own, but
Mhm.
they're all getting to the end result of I need to know how to do this better and more
Yeah.
efficiently. And we even go through this process where we go after the job's complete. Okay, what did we do right? What did we
Mhm.
do wrong? What did we learn? And what are
Right.
we never going to do again?
Yep.
And that's the process that you have to go through on to getting into mastery.
What Nate just referred to is what I call an after action review. So,
Yeah.
or in this case, if it's a job, so after action review for the job itself. And it is, those are great things to go ahead and go back. And the fact, especially if you've got a team working on it and you go back with the team and go through things, because the challenges, we'll remember the piece that was hard for us. We won't
Yeah.
remember the pieces that were hard for others that maybe we still need to change the process to get it better for everybody and get it consistent across the board and get that consistent result that we want, which is what mastery is all about, is that consistent result. So without having to think about it. And that's one of the pieces that so many people will never go back. And you'll see the people, some of my subcontractors, I look at it and they repeat the same challenge every time. Now, the great thing is now I know when their challenge is coming up and I can go ahead and remind them so that hey, you might want to do this differently this time. So we're not looking at this the same way. So whenever the
Yeah.
inspector walks in, so let's go ahead and take care of it now type of thing. But there's some people be able to pick that up and they realize and they're very conscious about that. Others, they'll repeat the same mistake over and over and over until it becomes too painful that they actually remember it. And then that's whenever the mastery happened. And that, like that Nate said, some people it takes 8,000 hours, some people it takes 20,000 hours. So I always look at it as I want to be as close to the 8,000 or less hours as I can to get the mastery. It's one of the reasons why I work with coaches. So it's one of the reasons why
That's
I
the
hang
whole
out with
point.
the network of people I do.
The whole point is like if you're gonna do it on your own, it's always going to take you longer to figure the things out, right?
Always.
If you have someone that's already been down the path before, or a guide that can guide you through all these things, that's the quickest way to get from not knowing to knowing, because they're going to point out the things that, okay, it might have worked in this one scenario, right? For
Right.
instance, it might have worked for Paige to do what she did and get the strap
Mm-hmm.
on and get the 2 inches above the ground and go every two
Yep.
feet. But she learned something there. But if Keith doesn't tell her, like, you think it might have been a better idea just put a dolly on the truck
Exactly.
when you're going over there, that might help
A
you next
thousand
time.
times easier.
That might help you. That might assist you in the next time you get a trim
Yeah.
package dropped, right?
Then you only have to lift it 4 inches once,
Yeah, once and then roll it on in,
then
right?
roll it in. Yeah.
That's the mastery. That's the part about having a guide or having a coach or being a
Yeah.
part of a team that's going over these things, because that's what you have to learn, is that it's the more efficient way to get through to mastery. I'm a firm believer in mentors. I'm a firm believer in good
Definitely.
positive networks to be a part of
Mhm.
that are doing the same thing. Because when you start sharing what your problems are, what your issues that you're facing, what are these things? That's how you move and transition over into mastery so much faster. And you've now made it efficient to be able to get over these hurdles and not to repeat the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
What's that? definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over
Yep,
again, expecting a different result. Well,
exactly.
this is the expedient version of being able to get to mastery versus staying stuck in the same pile.
And it's like Nate talked about, it's one of the, like, I thought of three different type of mentors, so or network that I end up having that go ahead and help me with this. So I've got, like, Nate and I are in the same industry, which means having someone in the same industry as you are means that they're familiar with what's going on. They talk the same language. A lot of times they face the same challenges that you faced. So they've got a background and be able to speak that conversation very easily. Which is really awesome whenever it comes down to any kind of industry that you might be in. I also am always a part of like a mastermind that has different industries in it. So, and the reason why you get that is it's the funniest thing is like even in construction, Nate and I can be doing things a certain way all the time because that's the only way we've known to do them.
Yeah.
So, and you go ahead and mention this to someone who's in a marketing business or someone who has, a brick and mortar somewhere, and they go, "Oh, well, all you got to do is this." Whenever they hear about what's going on, it's like, why in the heck didn't I think of that? And it's just
Exactly.
they do things differently. They see things from a different lens. So they have different experiences. And that's one of the reasons why you want to be a part of something like that too. And then the other one that I think is huge, and you'll have a lot of entrepreneurs who do not necessarily believe in this, but I'm going to go ahead and put it out there anyways. So is I have a mindset coach all the time.
Mhm.
One of the biggest things so that I've found from coaching and training, so over the last 15, 18 years, so and even for myself, even more importantly, so is whenever I got started, it wasn't the technical knowledge. So that was as much of the challenge. I mean, you had to learn it, you had to master it as far as that part goes. It was what was going on between my ears. So I was holding me up. There would be fears, there'd be challenges, there'd be things that would happen that I didn't understand why it was happening. And just having some of those conversations. So and now I've gotten to that point because that was a huge part of the coaching that I used to do was we
Mhm.
used to help people with their mindsets and things. And I still, even though I've done that many years of it, I still have a mindset coach. So
Yeah.
because of the fact that there's still so many different areas that I'm unaware of, and it's one of the reasons why like Nate and I are so quickly able to self-diagnose what's going on and realize whenever we're holding ourselves up. So, and a lot of times, like I joke with Alice now, I'll go out and there'll be a challenge going on, and I run through the whole challenge to her. So, and by the time I'm done speaking it out loud, I've already come up with a solution. She doesn't say a word. So I just look at her and I'm like, thanks for the coaching.
Yeah.
And I walk
Yeah.
back in. Now she's not my coach, so I don't ever advise that as your
Yeah.
spouse is your coach. No, but
I
it
wouldn't
works.
advise that either.
Yeah, but it works for me, and the fact that a lot of times I get to walk through it, and the fact that I've
Yeah.
walked other people through it so many different
Yeah.
times, it's just that fact of verbalizing it. I actually pick up what's going on and can do that. Now there are times where that doesn't happen, and that's whenever I've got my coach that I go to, and she's usually like, "This is what's going on," or she asks 2 or 3 pointed questions and lets me go ahead and self-reflect and come up with what actually is happening.
That's a
So,
good
which is
coach.
when you can find a really good coach, that's usually the way they go ahead and do that because they
Yeah.
realize it's much more powerful when it comes out of your mouth. Meaning, like if
Yeah.
she's talking to me, it comes out of my mouth, then I'll believe it and listen to it more than coming out of her mouth.
Well, so, you touched on a few things, but uh
Only if you,
the head coach, the one that's between your ears, that's what all the professional athletes, they all do the same thing.
Mhm.
They all have um this person that helps them with getting over their own personal stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
everybody has their own person. Nobody comes into this world unscathed or untouched or didn't have to go through some kind of
Well, actually,
trauma
when
at
we
some
first came
point.
into the world, Nate, we were unscathed and untouched, so we were good then. So
And
then
then we
humanity
came
screwed us
in,
all up. So
and then we came in. I don't know about you, but I got a butt whooping before I got a hug. So so I had some mental
Nate already
trauma
came with
that
baggage. So
I had to manage through. Right, I came out rough and tough, ready to rumble. Um, but I'm about the same thing. I spent a lot of time working on myself mentally, keeping the cobwebs, down and going through the challenges and I challenge myself daily to go through these things, right? And so I think it's important what you're talking about. But yeah, I'm always like being around like-minded people, that are in my same industry. I like being in groups that have nothing to do with my industry, so I can get a different perspective. And I like having conversations with people that we talk about not just what's going on in the industry or not just what's going on inside of my community, but what's going on with me personally or what's going on with them personally. Sometimes, I've got some really close friends where we just talk about the things that come up in life, and
right.
those are the things that we have to work through, whether it's our kids, our neighborhood, our, emotional things, relationships with spouses, past trauma with parents, whatever, all those things. You have to have a safe space to be able to have those conversations and work through those issues.
Right.
Because
Sure.
I've had a lot of board meetings where I'm the only one in the room, and those are not very fun. I get 4 or 5 different personalities screaming at each other. That's really a scary place.
Makes it interesting if you're watching Nate on camera though.
I should film one of those. That
There
would
you
be
go.
interesting.
But
But,
and that's part of the mastery piece comes into is, and it's one of the things, especially in the beginning, a lot of times you're going more with the person who's in your industry, which is the perfect place to start, because to get mastery in whatever you're focusing on now, so getting that person who does exactly what you're doing is the person you want to be around, because they're going to give you those shortcuts to get good at that piece, the technical skills that you're looking to get good at. So
yeah,
that's the perfect person to start out with. So then you start realizing as you go through it, and it's up to you how you want to implement it. I know what I ended up doing was I got really good on that technical side, working with people so who are in the industry that were mentors for me. And then I added in a mindset person actually, so I added it next. So and then I added that piece in, and then I went and added in other people who were in other industries. So who was our mastermind type of group that Nate and one of the masterminds that Nate and I are in right now. So that was part of that. So was to go ahead and go through that piece, because those are the people who are in business so one of the big challenges that happens as you go through this, the more mastery that you gain in an area, the less people who can actually be the resource and the mentor for you. So is what
yeah,
ends up happening,
yeah,
because there's less people who are further ahead. So on the path that you want to be on. And that's always the way I look at it.
yeah,
Used to get asked that question all the time whenever I was doing the coaching that I used to do. And they would ask me, how do I know who the right coach is? So I said, find someone who's doing exactly what you want to be doing right now. So, and follow exactly what they tell you to do. So don't do anything different. If they tell you to jump off the bridge, jump off the bridge. There's a reason behind it. So is what it comes down to. Don't question it. Just do it. You can get follow up later on. So, and that's one of the hardest things for most people to do. So is to do that piece. That person though, so is getting with that person and finding them. And then once you're going to get to a point where if you've got the right person that you're mentoring with, so if they continue to grow, which is as long as they've got the same philosophy you do, they will continue to grow, which means they're going to be further ahead of the path. It can be someone you work with for a very long time. And usually as you go through things, then you'll start to realize, hey, there's something that they don't have, so that I want to go ahead and get from someplace else. So that might be the mindset person. That might be the overall business. So network
yeah.
or another community that you go ahead and join that just has different viewpoints on things, but a lot of the same beliefs that you've got, so that can help you move forward. And it's one of the key pieces is that growth, that consistent growth. So because when you master one thing, what you typically realize is there's so many other things so that I need to go ahead and work on, or I want to go ahead and work on to go ahead and create that mastery in other areas of my life.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Your mentor can be in multiple stages of this, right?
Mhm.
Um, but they can't be in all stages all the time,
No.
because then you're getting to a point where you're not learning from them, because you're not seeing a different perspective coming in from a different
Mhm.
source. And that's part of it too, is that you have to filter information on from different people to be able to say, hey, what's true and what's not true, and what's true for me. I always know that when I'm in a room and I'm the smartest person in the room, that's not a room that I need to be learning from, right? That's a room that I'm supposed to be teaching in, which
You're the
is
resource, right?
it's a different piece. But when you get to mastery, you have to understand that your point of being of knowing the most out of, the majority of people in that room, that's where you're teaching them. And that's where your success comes from, is teaching them. So you have to be learning something from something else to be able to teach them for the next stage. And
And
so,
and Rose, I just want to hop in one little thing with that piece, Nate, and then we'll
sure.
let you jump back into the other pieces. One of the big things that I always want to realize is if you're in a room like that and you are the resource, one of the biggest pieces that I got out of coaching whenever I was the coach, so is the fact that I literally hit the basics so many times, were the pieces that were the building blocks that got me to my success. And it gave me the opportunity to go back and go, how well am I applying this? So
Mhm.
what am I doing with this? When's the last time I looked at this piece that I just talked to them about? And it
Exactly.
really helps you go ahead and go get that evaluation and go back deep dive on things and go ahead and actually solidify that foundation and the base that your business is working on.
Well,
All
it's
right,
how
Nate,
I
sorry.
always know. It's how I always know when someone's ready to move from journeyman to master.
Mm,
Is because the last section of being a journeyman is that you're now teaching somebody else. and in the teaching of somebody else, now you're looking at and implementing all the things that you taught, right? So for instance, I had a guy who, after about 7 or 8 years was finally moving into the next piece, but he's never really managed anybody. He's a great doer, great knowledge resource,
Yep.
great customer service. Like he'd gotten all these things together, but he never really had a successful management of a person.
Right.
And it's when he started getting into his management role and teaching them that his all the other pieces started to elevate higher, because now he could start to realize all the things that he wasn't doing, but he was telling
Yep.
them is like, oh, I should have been doing this. Oh, that's what that is. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. Now I understand this. It's when you start moving into teaching that you start implementing the things that it starts to make sense for you in mastery. And then that's when he was able to elevate. But that's the last piece of journeyman to kind of like filter that in, because everyone's going to have something that they're going to be missing along that journeyman to master phase.
Yep. And that truly is like, that's the biggest key that goes into it, is you start to realize those pieces, and it does elevate you, because like one of the exercises that we used to do at the events that we used to do. So it was, we would go ahead and have someone give someone who was standing up on stage directions. So on how to walk off of the stage. So, and everyone's like, oh, that's easy to do. No, it's not. So,
Yep.
because the challenge that most people have is that, especially when you get to the mastery point, is that it's so simple to you. Like Nate was talking about earlier, you really have to put some thought into the steps that actually occur to get the result that you've created by going ahead and doing this so many different times, that it's like, the athletes, the basketball player. So they hit free throws because they've taken 170,000 free throws in the last year. So it's second nature. The muscles know exactly what to do. They don't have to think about it when they go up there. That's where the issue comes, though, is that when you have to break it down and explain it to somebody else, now you really find out what the steps were. So, and that's where you start to find out whether you're going to be the person who's able to become that teacher and that trainer, because now you can break it down. And if you do those little exercises like that, or do something like have somebody make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, so they're blindfolded, so they can't see. You've got to tell them exactly what to do to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, and you've got to explain all of the steps. It's hilarious when you do the
Yeah.
exercises, because people are like, oh, that's easy. I'm like, all right, perfect. Come on.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and do
Show me
this.
how to do this.
Yeah.
And you find out that your communication skills are failing.
Yeah, exactly. And
I
your
am one
thought
of
process
those.
is not. Yeah. Yeah.
I am constantly working on my communication skills. Ask my wife.
It's, that part right there that you mentioned, Nate, is one of the funny things, is that when people say, oh yeah, I'm really good at communication.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, we had some long-term clients that we worked with. Like one of the families that we worked with was, I want to say it was 13 or 14 years. So that we had been coaching them and their family.
Yeah.
And every time we actually did what we would actually go to their home area. So,
Mhm.
and we would do something with their whole team, is what we would do. Every time we went there, one of the pieces they wanted to talk about was communication. And it was always funny because they would bring it up. It's like, all right, we've covered this. Love it. And that's what my partner and I
Back
would
to
go
the
and look at it
basics.
like, how are we going to explain it this time? So, because obviously something didn't land right.
Back to the basics.
Yep.
Communication at its best. I think communication is one of those things that is definitely a part of mastery, right?
Mhm.
Because that's the thing most people fail at. Like I I failed at speech in high school. I failed at speech twice, maybe even 3 times in college, 'cause I kept taking the course thinking I was gonna get better. And I'm still working on it to this day. And it's one of those things where I think I'm being an effective communicator, and people can't read my mind, right? And
I
I
don't
had
understand why not, Nate.
yeah, I don't either, right? I mean,
We've
because I
even gotten
just
rid of the hair, so there's no hair in the way, so they should be able to read our minds.
I should have just these things that just I want that bubble that just pops up.
There
And
you
then I
go.
started realizing I don't want
No, you
everyone
don't
reading
want people reading that all the time.
but it's like, I fail in my communication style over and over and over again, right? But it's the thing that I keep working on.
Right.
Now I get a passing grade to be able to be in the mastery component, to be able to explain things. But
Mhm.
I always feel like I'm not explaining it to the best degree. Um, and so even I am still learning how to get better at doing things. And that's
Mhm.
part of my obsessions It's what I read books on. It's what I interact with. Um, and so, I think it's important for people to realize that mastery is always ongoing. It's
Yes.
never completed. It's always, and I think about this with those old kung fu masters and what was that? Kill Bill, that movie. I like movies, right? So that Kill Bill movie where the girl was having to go up and the guy that had the long beard and he'd flip it up and go through and he can do all the things with like two pinkies and he's constantly hauling
Right.
water up this entire mountain and things. And it's funny to me that as part of their culture that you keep practicing and you keep going through the
Right.
steps way long after you mastered it. And you
Hmm.
have to, because if not, if you're not continuously trying, then you're getting worse, right? Or you're not getting
Right.
better. You're just kind of staying at one level. And so,
No, and actually, you were right when you said it first, Nate. So you
mhm,
actually there's only two states. You're either
yeah,
growing or you're shrinking. There's no in between state. You don't stay in one spot. It never happens. So when people who
never.
think that that's one of the biggest mistakes that can happen, so is you will grow or you will shrink, which is one of the reasons why like whenever you start working out and things like that, if
Hmm.
you don't continue working out on a consistent basis, so your muscles start to atrophy, you start to typically most people start to gain weight and things like that. That's what happens whenever you stop doing whatever it is. There's no like I'm going to stick at this piece. You might be able to maintain a certain weight, maintain a body style, but that's because of the fact that you're still putting in the work on a consistent basis. And that's the piece that you've got to look at. Like Nate's talking about the speech and the communications and the sales and things like that. It's like I know I'm sharper whenever I'm having more sales conversations. There's no question because it continues to sharpen that knife on a daily basis. Oh, and that's I now take it as a challenge that I sell every day, whether that's to a customer, whether that's to my subcontractors, whether it's to my team, whether that's to my wife. So whatever's happening, there are sales going on every day. I'll
Yeah.
guarantee it. They may not see it that way, but that's what's going on.
Well, the old sales training. You're either selling somebody or they're selling you. Which one's
Exactly.
buying?
Yeah, exactly. I prefer it if someone's buying mine, so as opposed to me buying theirs.
I love that.
So, but that's the mastery is one of those pieces that it's that, like you talked about, it's that constant effort, that constant, sharpening the stone, that constant going after it, looking for new ways, looking for different ways. And that goes back to the obsession part that we talked about in one of
Mhm.
the most recent podcasts. So, that whole obsession part, that's why you keep doing it. I mean, there's people that have been like in sales they're excellent at sales.
Yeah.
Most of the people who are excellent in sales continue to look at other people who do sales and find out what they're doing, ask them what's working for them. Those little tiny things that can make just that little bit of a difference and keep your edge and keep your skill where you want it to be. And that's mastering construction's the same thing. I mean, I what if you ever get the tradesperson in construction that goes, I've been doing this for 35 years, get concerned. So because they may have 35 years of experience, if they don't have 35 years of growth during that time with their experience, so you're getting something that's 35 years old as far as the process goes. Now, some parts that might be okay and still work. So most of them, that's now you're dealing with old technology, just like with computers. So it goes out of date really fast. There's always new things being brought into
Always.
the industry, new ways to be able to go ahead and do this even better. Heck, I look at it whenever I first started. So we used to hang green board. So in our bathrooms and stuff like that, there's no way I'd hang green board ever now. Well,
Yeah.
there's no way. It's like it's all Durock or Hardy or Schluter systems or something along those lines of what goes into our showers now. So I learned that. So they came up with a different process. They came up with a better way to do it that actually lasts longer for the homeowner. That's happening in every one of our trades. So every day.
You always got to be looking for the next thing and apply past knowledge to future results, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but that's part of mastery too,
Right.
because you can take what you've already known and then apply it going forward.
Right.
Mastery is just probably one of the greatest things that we've ever been given on this planet, just to strive for.
Hmm.
Um, I always love getting to a point where um, you're just doing things effortlessly. And now, don't get it wrong. I do enjoy learning new things where I get in go like I mean I'm all in or I'm like on the sideline. There is no in between for me, right? And so I bought a farm. So I am all in on figuring out how to grow vegetables and how to, take care
Hmm.
of goats and how to take care of chickens and defend off the
Yep.
chickens from the raccoons. And but I'm constantly learning how to get better at the thing. And, 10 years from now, I'm gonna be a phenomenal farmer. I could tell you that,
Uh-huh.
and,
It's that's one of the funny things I look at is when you get someone who masters something and realizes, like, put the effort in, put the focused effort in, that they were very conscious about what they were doing to get there. Once you do that once, so it typically then starts to pour across your life.
yeah,
Like you were talking about the farming piece, Nate. It's like I was thinking at the same time. It's like Alice and I have been going back and forth, and we just got back from vacation. It was with my family, and my brother's been doing carnivore as far as his diet goes and stuff like
yeah,
that. And I've heard lots of people talk about it and how they experience it and things like that. So, and I was looking at that, and I'm like, you know what? I think that's the next route that I'm going. So I've been diving into that piece to learn more and more about that. And Alice wants, she's not going to do carnivore, but she's going to do animal or something. I guess there's more products that you can eat there that she really wants, that she doesn't want to go ahead and give up, is what it comes down to. So she's looking at those pieces, but that's what both of us are diving into, what those things are, what does that mean, how are we going to integrate that into our lives now? Because like the way my brother does it is one way, and he works in a plant, so is what he
yeah,
works at. So he's got, like, he can bring all his food, put it in the refrigerator, eat it throughout the day. I'm out running around during the day. I don't have a refrigerator. I've got a cooler with me. So things aren't going to necessarily stay the same sometimes in the cooler, because sometimes the cooler gets left partially open because I'm in a hurry and I don't pay attention. That's
yeah.
what it comes down to.
That we roll.
So I've got to make adaptations to the things that I'm going to do for it to make it work for me. But
Mhm.
that's part of the fun of the mastery piece. So, and like you said, once I
Yeah,
get my hours in, so there won't be any question about it, I'll go ahead and hit that the way I want to hit it. I'll be getting the results that I'm looking to get from it. So we'll make adjustments. So either way.
that's so awesome. I thought I was already on an animal diet. If it's an animal, I'm eating it. There we go.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's the
Even
first
if
thing I'm
even
looking
if
for.
dinosaurs came back, I think I'd try to eat me one of those too.
Be the Flintstones with the big brontosaurus burger on your plate.
I'll get my club out. Don't worry.
There we go. All right. Anything else you want to add on the mastery part, Nate?
Um, the last part I'll add to mastery is never give up, never quit, never surrender, um, because that's the only way.
That consistent, persistent action, so, is the way
Sure.
to get there. There's no question about it. Make sure you continue to take that, like Nate said, that's part of your discipline. So, people, one of the funny things that people are always like, yeah, I'm listening to this motivational stuff. Motivation's great, but motivation's like a shower, so it washes off every day. So you've got to do
Yeah.
it again and again and again. The people who are successful become masters at it. It's a discipline is what happens. So, and the discipline is what carries them through, because it's who they are. It's what they've committed to doing. So, and they will take those actions because that's what they said. Be that person who becomes the master who's disciplined in everything that they do, and you'll have a lot higher level of success. And it'll become a lot easier for you over time. Make sure, for everyone who's listening to this, make sure to share this with your friends. Have them hop on, listen to, whether you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify. So make sure to go ahead and actually give us a review. That would be great. So go ahead and rate us. If you take 30 seconds to go ahead and rate us, we would love that piece. Make sure to go ahead and listen every Tuesday. So we're dropping a new episode out there. Make sure you're listening for next week's episode. We'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great one.